3 times, Alan.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars and welcome to my review for the 1975 all-time classic Jaws. The film is obviously directed by Steven Spielberg and it stars Roy Scheider, Robert Shaw, Richard Dreyfuss, Lorraine Gary and Mary Hamilton. Right, okay, so there are some films out there that are perfection, really, for want of a better word, that actually can be quite intimidating to a review in some ways, because how do you review perfection? There's no criticisms really I can give you about this film, but it is one of the greatest films ever made. One of my personal favourites. I've got a number of Jaws memorabilia that I like to collect, and you can see some behind me if you look carefully enough. And with the film just celebrating its 50th anniversary, I thought I would, to celebrate that, start a new film series of reviews. Flawless film reviews, I'm calling them, because essentially this film is flawless. For those who love movies like I do and many of you do that watch this channel, I don't think there's much of a debate here in regards to the status of this film as a cinema masterpiece. So we're going to talk a little bit about it. There's not a great deal of point talking about the plot, that kind of stuff. If you don't know what Jaws is about and you've never seen the film and you're watching this review right now, stop this review and go and watch the film. I implore you. There are, I'm sure, still people out there that haven't seen it, probably of a younger generation, that see this film as a 50-year-old film that they have absolutely no interest in. They need to really watch it, in my opinion. But I just wanted to discuss and talk about this film in a sense of, you know, its cultural impact, how it moulded like the blockbuster industry, really. In many regards, this is the first real blockbuster summer popcorn movie blockbuster. It was, you know, a phenomenon when it came out, and it still remains to this day. If you ask anybody what's the greatest shark film ever made, you know, I'd be staggered if anybody said anything but Jaws, because it quite simply is. And when you weigh up everything in regards to this film, it's a miracle that A, this film ever really got made, and B, that it ever got finished, because this film is notorious for the difficult shoot that it was. It was, you know, really challenging. Steven Spielberg, I mean, obviously he's an absolute legend at this point in time. A filmography littered with classics. At the time, this was his second cinema release. He'd just done the Sugarland Express. Duel was a TV movie, and I think he'd directed a couple of TV movies. I think he'd direct maybe even a Columbo episode, something like that. But he was 27 years old when he started filming, directing Jaws. And he was insistent that it be filmed on the open sea. No film had ever done that before, for good reason, because it's a bloody nightmare, because you've got to take everything into consideration, like weather, tides, so on and so forth. And I don't think any of this, I've seen many documentaries, and you may have done as well, where Spielberg has said, you know, we didn't really think this through, we must have been crazy. We didn't pay enough respect to Mother Nature, sort of thing, and it was an absolute nightmare. So you've got the whole shooting schedule that was constantly going over schedule, over budget. And early on in his career, Spielberg had a really bad reputation for going over budget and over schedule. In the 80s, he learned to kind of reel that back in, sort of thing, so that he doesn't hold that reputation so much anymore. But in his early career, he absolutely did. And this was the kicker, really. This was the one that really did it. Massively over budget and massively over schedule. It was a frustrating shoot for everybody, including the actors, the writers, because they didn't even have a full script when they started. most days at the end of shooting, Spielberg would meet with the actors and the writers in his cabin where he was staying on the island to kind of discuss the following day's shoot, and maybe the day after, sort of thing, to kind of figure out what they were going to do, what they were going to say, what they were going to try and shoot next, because it was such a problematic shoot. Now, I've just talked about some of the difficulties there that they had shooting this film, but by far the biggest problem that they had on this film was Bruce, and Bruce was the name they affectionately gave to the mechanical shark that they had built for the film. It just didn't work. It never worked. It might have worked one time in 30 when they tried to get it to work, which is why you don't see a great deal of the shark in the film. Really. I mean, you do, but they wanted to show more, but they couldn't because the shark never bloody worked. In actual fact, it turned out to be a good thing that the shark didn't always work, because what they showed of the shark in this was just enough. It was perfect. It was perfection. The scene where you first really see the shark, when Chief Brody's throwing the chum in the water and the shark head pops up, and he walks back and says the iconic line, "We're going to need a bigger boat." Stunning. Perfection. And then for the other shots that you see, brilliant. It looks absolutely brilliant. You know, like I say, early in the film, the first shot of the lady swimming in the ocean and it's dark, and then the shark strikes and drags her all over the place and pulls her under. Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. The scene where it takes the young boy on the beach and it just pulls him under, and you see the blood mixing in with the water. You don't need to see much more than that. You know exactly what's happened. The scene where it takes the guy in the boat and you see the leg floating down to the bottom and bouncing off the bottom. I mean, that traumatized me as a kid. And the scene that probably invented the jump scare, when Hooper goes under and he finds that boat and that head pops out. Tell me you didn't jump 6 feet up in your seat when you saw that scene in the cinema. I absolutely did. It absolutely terrified me. Spielberg crafted one of the most tension-filled, scariest, most entertaining films ever put to screen. How this, if you like, I sometimes still have this debate with people that don't think of Jaws as a horror. It's absolutely a horror. It's one of the scariest films ever made. It's really, really terrifying. There's so many scenes in this that are traumatic when you watch it as a child, and they still give me goosebumps when I watched them today. I just re-watched this film a couple of days ago when I was on holiday. I downloaded it on purpose so I could watch it on holiday. And I was just transfixed. You know, and I can't tell you how many times I've seen this film. No idea, but it's a lot. And it still had me transfixed. All those scenes that I mentioned, they still are impactful now. The scene, I think, that traumatized me the most as a youngster seeing this film was the scene where Robert Shaw, Quint, goes into the shark's mouth and then it bites down, and that guttural scream that he does, and the sheer panic of this man, this tough man who has, you know, he's been on the Indianapolis, you know, all these things that he's experienced, and he's hunted sharks all his life, and this is how this man goes out. This is one of the toughest men you'd ever seen. Sheer panic and terror as the shark takes him, and when it bites down again and the blood comes out of his mouth and he just goes silent and drags him under. come on. Are there any scarier scenes than that? It just absolutely terrified me, and it's still so effective. It really, really is incredible. So you've got brilliant writing here. You've got staggeringly creative direction by Steven Spielberg, and you've got a trifecta here of staggeringly good actors giving incredible performance. Roy Scheider as Brody. Um, he's kind of us in this film. You know, he's a stranger on this island. He's newly moved there from New York. Thinks it's the safest place on earth, and he experiences this terror. Doesn't even like the water, but he's got to sort all this out. Brilliant. Richard Dreyfuss as Hooper. Brilliant chemistry with Roy Scheider and Robert Shaw. And so memorable in regards to his performance. And then we've also got, obviously, Robert Shaw as Quint. Infamously, I mean, just a mind-blowingly good performance, but infamously, he had a bit of a problem with Richard Dreyfuss on the set. They didn't get on, and he bullied him, really, in a lot of ways. But it worked, because that's what the characters were like with each other. Quint bullied Hooper. Quint didn't like Hooper. So whether he was going method, Robert Shaw, I don't think so. Not from a lot of the stuff that I've seen and watched documentary-wise. They just didn't really click and get on, but it worked brilliantly on screen. Those three performances are some of the best you'll ever see in a film. And the final act of this film, in my humble opinion, is one of the best final acts you will ever see in a film as well. Because it's like a different film in many ways from what you've seen before. It's like it's all building up to that final act. Okay, we've got to take the shark out now, and you get this sense of relief almost that they hire Quint eventually. It's like, oh God, they finally hired Quint. You know, after everything that's happened, they haven't been listening to sense. Finally, the mayor, the ridiculously stupid Mayor Vaughn, decides to hire Quint, and then so you get this warm feeling of like, oh, it's going to be all right now. They've hired Quint, and then you feel this sense of relief and comfort as they head out, because Quint's so ultra confident and all this kind of stuff, and then the slow descent into terror and chaos as the final act unfolds, dripped with staggering performances, and I think one of the best acting scenes you've ever seen put to screen, the Indianapolis speech that Robert Shaw gives. If you just look at that scene and you look at Richard Dreyfuss's face, he is totally hypnotized by the man in that speech. And infamously as well, it's known, because Steven Spielberg is talking about this, that because at the time when he gives that speech, the character, he was half cooked. He was pretty drunk, really. The character was supposed to be. They'd just had their evening meal and they'd had a few drinks. So Robert Shaw asked Steven Spielberg if he could try it after having a few drinks. Steven Spielberg agreed. But Robert Shaw was a bit of a drinker, and he had one too many. So the first time they tried to shoot that scene, it wasn't able to be done because basically he was too drunk, Robert Shaw. So when they tried again next time, the following day, he absolutely nailed it. I think Steven Spielberg said he doesn't remember doing a great deal of takes on it. I think he pretty much nailed it straight away. And it's one of, as I've said, I think the greatest acting scenes you will ever see in a film. Totally hypnotizing from a powerhouse performer who is Robert Shaw. So, I mean, where do we go from here, really, in regards to Jaws? It's a stunning piece of cinema. It's a stunning statement to the filming world from Spielberg. It's an absolute crime that the film was nominated for an Oscar for Best Picture, but Spielberg wasn't nominated for Best Director. That is madness, and there's no way that should have been allowed. It's still scandalous to me in now, and you can see footage of it when the Oscars are announced, and you can clearly see the disappointment on Spielberg's face, and it's just disgraceful. It really is disgraceful, and it didn't even win Best Picture. How is that possible again? So there's a lot of things associated with this picture like that. I think some snobbery, which is part of the reason I've never really been a big fan of the Oscars, because it's snobbery, and if it's your face fits type of thing with that award ceremony. And there's been so many injustices over the years, and this being one of the biggest, in my opinion. It is absolutely an all-time classic. It is, as the title of this review says, a flawless film, and one that I think I will be watching until the day I die. It is ageless. It's timeless. It's a masterpiece. Say what you want about the sequels. For me, they're kind of they sit over on the side there. I'd quite like the second one. Beyond that, we know they're not very good, but the second one is, I think, an underrated sequel, and it's really nice to have Roy Scheider back in that film, even though he really didn't want to do it. So yeah, I just wanted to, on the 50th anniversary of this film, talk about the film and give you my thoughts on why I think it's just a masterpiece. So let me know, guys, what are your thoughts on Jaws? What are your thoughts on the Jaws franchise? And let me know as well, films that you consider to be flawless. And if I agree, then I might even be doing a flawless film review for that as well. So thank you very much for joining me, guys. I will, of course, be back with plenty more content on the channel very, very soon.